everyone. I'm Jessica Shaw. Wow. I'm Jessica Shaw. I'm thrilled to get to be here to talk to all of you about this incredible show. I've seen all 10 episodes. I want to bring out the producers, some of the cast. Let's start with Eddie Redmayne. Lashana Lynch. Gareth Neal. And Nigel Martin. Well, Eddie,
Thanks for coming, guys.
Eddie, I want to start with you because it's been a minute since you've done TV. And what was it about this project, about this character, even though I guess there are many characters within this character, that made you want to just dig into this?
Firstly, evening, guys. You're literally one of the first audiences to see this, so thank you for being generous. I grew up watching the film, the original movie, which starred Edward Fox, and in my family, in my home, it was this battered VHS that just got watched on repeat for some reason. And even as a kid, I loved the theatricality of it. I loved the fact that this guy was an actor in some ways. And so when it arrived in my inbox from these gentlemen, it was with great trepidation that I opened the scripts, because I just thought it was such a brilliant piece. The book was so brilliant and the film had been so brilliant. And what I read, and we were sent the first 3 episodes, felt completely fresh and completely new, and yet it had the DNA that I loved from the original. It had this kind of chameleon-like quality in the Jackal, but it had this riveting structure that was 2 people who were obsessive, very good at what they do, but morally complicated, and hopefully you kind of warm to both of them, but you also see the flaws in both of them, and they are charged on a sort of one-way mission to collision. And I thought structurally that was kind of intriguing. And so whilst it retained the DNA of that piece that I'd been so passionate about when I was younger, it was also completely fresh and new.
Yeah, I mean, Lashana, Bianca, I loved everything about her, from her backstory, like her home, how she navigates knowing that she knows things in the workplace and maybe isn't given the chance that she should be. I won't spoil things beyond that, but was there something in particular that you latched onto about her?
I mean, all of it. She is fully fleshed out human being who, from the first episode, I could see the psychology behind who she is, how she approaches her work, how she approaches her home life as work, almost like a project of hers, was intriguing to me, because I'd been a member of MI6 before. I don't work for MI6, but I've been in there somewhat, and I said that I'm not going to repeat myself. I do not want to go there again. I want to do something fresh. I want to do a comedy. I want to relax my body and not do stunts again. And then the first 3 episodes came in, and it just felt absolutely undeniable. And there was something about her that felt, I could see her journey playing out. I recognized her as a person, as a human being, but I also was terrified for her. I could see that she was on this downward spiral that would eventually lead her into more and more chaos, and she would drag herself through more and more mess that would, one, be really riveting for audiences, but for me playing her, I knew that I'd be able to push boundaries, allow us to give audiences like yourself just a fresher, bigger, more feeling within Black women stories. That's really, really important to me. And outside of the comedy that I've been pushing for these years, that I got in certain elements of the show, I just really cared. I cared about her journey as a woman, but I cared about her journey as a wife and a mother. That was really important to me, that representation was fully fleshed out and felt good and felt real. And I like her. I think that she's a really likable character who you root for at the beginning, and then morally you question if her choices will help you to root for the Jackal at some points in this show, which is strange. And I know you don't want to think that you'll root for the Jackal, but you will. Because he's great. When she makes bad choices, you think, actually, maybe I should just go for him instead. and I like that. I like that we, continue to give audiences that chance to question their own morals and question where they sit in the world and where they're at politically and what they push for. That kind of storytelling is really groundbreaking to me. So I was grateful to see it on a page.
Lashana, you mentioned that you played MI6 now in Bond and now in this. Do you get to whisk through airport security? What's the privilege? What do you get with it?
You'd think. No, none of that. But there is, I don't know, sometimes I feel like I walk past people in the street and they are a member of MI6 because there's a thing that they recognize that they think I might have that I don't. But inside, I'm I don't know, my own kind of MI6 agent, so I don't know. I'm not confirming or denying whether I am.
Fair. Gareth and Nigel, I was wondering, both of them just talked about the tone and figuring out how to thread that needle of, okay, there's a questionable morality going on, and yet I found myself at different points rooting heavily for one or the other, and it switches depending on the episode. But finding that what Eddie was saying about making it feel very contemporary, though based on something that is from decades ago. But tell me about finding that right tone.
Well, I think we probably echo what Eddie's just told you, that similarly, we didn't grow up together, but we're about the same generation. We knew the book. We also loved the movie. We are actually younger than we look, and we didn't go and see the movie in the theatre, but it was in England, certainly it was run constantly on the TV. And I loved the book, and I loved the film. And then because we are dealers with Universal, and Universal made the picture and the Fred Zinman movie, so we had access to the IP, and we thought, no, we're not going to go there. We love the film too much. We're not going to do it. We're just not. We revere it too much. And then we just thought, it's tempting though. And I think what we really enjoyed with it was, the book. It's not a long novel. It's a great novel, but it's not very long, and it's a 2-hour movie. We really like taking different dramatic form. We've done this 2 or 3 times before. You take a movie idea and you play to the strengths of episodic television. So we have 10 hours. That means that hopefully if you enjoyed this and you watch more, you'll root for both of these characters. And just like you said, at times you really want the Jackal to win, and then you think morally, but how? How can I want that? I do want him to get away. I want him to succeed. No, I want her to get him. And hopefully that cat and mouse thing works all the way through. It's not just in one sitting of a movie. It's 10 weeks or however you want to consume television. But it leans into all of the things that we love about episodic. And therefore I think playing with that dramatic form is very satisfying.
Yeah, exactly right. That you kind of, I think you lull the audience into rooting for these characters, and then you twist it around and slap them in the face with some of the actions that they do.
Love a good face slap. Love a good face.
And as Gareth said, we were very careful at the beginning. We wanted to get a writer on board who loved the project as much as we did, the original source material. And then how do we update it, modernise it, lean into long-form television, and keep some of the DNA of the original. So I think if people have never seen it, it doesn't matter. If you have, you get these kind of little Easter eggs along the way of the original movie or novel, which is fun for us.
Tell us about the training that the two of you did in order to play your respective. First of all, I love seeing them. It's you have no idea what a treat it is to have them together because you don't get a ton of time. But how did you train for these two intense characters?
I would say like part of the I don't know what you guys find, but the thing I enjoy most about our job is rehearsal, is the kind of process, and playing someone who was so process driven and who one of the great appeals of it was ultimately is an actor. You know, he is a pretty accomplished actor, and getting to really dig into those specific skills was wonderful. So whether it was working with our brilliant makeup department, the prosthetic artists, but really digging into their process and being able to then bring some of the intricacies of that and to the screen. So for example, Richard, who was our prosthetic artist, you know, he took this laser scan of me early and brought this polystyrene head to work, in which he was then going to sculpt clay on to show some of these new forms of characters he was creating. And when I saw that head, I called up Brian, our director, and said, "We've got to have the head. The head is kind of ingenious." Like, and similarly, Richard's his utensils, these old wooden scribes that he would sculpt the clay with, were so beautiful and wonderful. I was like, we need them in the production. So that part of the process was wonderful. But we had some espionage training.
In our school.
Exactly. We did spy school, which was pretty enthralling.
Yeah, it was us basically looking at some very archival looking pieces that are, I feel like they literally deserve to be in a museum. Things that help you disguise things in this world. And after that, we went out onto the streets of London, specifically Covent Garden, and had to find someone that was sent to our phone. So we used the reflections of shop windows, car mirrors, peeked around corners, not in a creepy way.
Slightly creepy way.
It felt like you were being slightly creepy because you're trying to follow someone that actually that you don't know. You're doing it for an exercise, but actually those kinds of
And record them on your phone.
And record them.
Saying slightly creepy kind of.
So it was creepy. Okay, we were creeps for the day. So this person was sitting at a pizza shop, and then they went into a chemist, and we had to follow them through the aisles and take pictures of them secretly without them seeing, which is strange, but it really helped inform the character down the line. There's certain moments you'll see in the show whereby Bianca and the Jackal are on the hunt for someone. And it was great that we had that training at the beginning, because we got to really utilize what that means, how it feels, and how effective it is for people in both worlds. And I think it's those kinds of clues that help you to realize just how much the two characters are narrowing in on each other, just how much they are in parallel, and weirdly quite similar. And eventually there's a physical and historical kind of respect that they gain from each other, from everything from their basic training to how successful this man has become, and the fascination of how he utilizes his training in a way that is like highly sophisticated, and in a way that someone like Bianca would only dream of being. And I like to think that in another world they'll be friends, because they work really, really similarly.
Love that. The rom-com.
The rom-com of Bianca and Jackal.
Gareth, Nigel, what do you reckon?
The spin-off.
That's the night, the evening of the Jackal. Were you guys getting reports like they passed by school? They did it. They got the picture of the guy in the pizza place.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, we wanted to do the original film, which you're all going to go off now this weekend and find it and watch it. And of course, the techniques are completely different, aren't they? Because in those days, if you wanted to change your birth date, you just like my grandmother did in her passport. She just got Tipp-Ex out and then just changed the date so she looked younger, and you could put a photograph of somebody else, you know. And in the original film, you know, the sort of inspiration for the Bianca character is looking in Rolodex for all the, you know. that's not the world we're in now. So we couldn't really use very much of that, and we had to do, had to be dark web and all those kind of things. But we tried to keep in that sense of, that ultimately there would be some old-fashioned spycraft and tradecraft, and so there'd be a bit of all of that. So they got a lot of training, but I don't know how successful Eddie was, because the day he went out, he was kind of. Do you want to tell the story? Which story is this?
Eddie Redmayne!
Yeah.
It was going quite well.
Unfortunately, there were a few selfies along the way while he was trying to stay discreet.
What I love about what you're saying, Gareth, though, is that what is interesting is the more the world becomes. One of the appeals for me about this script was that it felt analog. It felt like those spy thrillers from the 70s, in which it's about, as Gareth was saying, the craft. It was about the process. But weirdly, as the world has become more technical and more, computerized, it transpires that that is the route that some of these agencies are taking. And Richard, our brilliant prosthetics artist, who I spent quite a lot of time with, he said, he had been approached by international spy agencies to work with them, because now facial recognition is such a massive part of what our life is, and being able to avoid that is something. So I found it kind of interesting that actually the Jackal's techniques have become more analog, because that's the way you disappear now, is by not having an online presence, by not having any kind of...
Didn't we find out the other day that there's an FBI head of disguise?
Yeah.
There's a job, if you want to apply for it, or it's maybe CIA or FBI, there is an executive in charge of disguise.
Yeah, it's the circle of life, really. Eddie, I wanted to ask you about some of the disguises that the Jackal plays. Your performance is so incredible, because each one is so distinctive, and the physicality that you bring is so different with each one, and not just, yes, there's prosthetics and there's a different look, but it was so striking, and to see each different character that you inhabited. How was that sort of figuring out being in this series but playing many different people?
Thank you. As actors, it was so appealing for that very reason. It's our dream. Like when you're a kid and you want to be an actor, you want to play things far from you. And I felt that this experience was like an actor's playground. But when I did Theory of Everything, it was the first job in which I had the strength to ask for what I needed. As far as process was concerned, and in that I worked with a movement coach and with the prosthetic artist and the costume designer all together, because you can't do any of these things in a vacuum. They all have to work together. So you can work with a language and a dialect coach on the German, for example, with the Becker character, the guy you meet at the beginning. But the second you have the prosthetic on and you realize that he's a 70-year-old chain smoker, you can have got the German perfect, in my voice, kind of sagt einen was, but the second you've got that prosthetic on and he's a chain smoker, those two things don't marry. So finding that vocally, but at the same time how the physicality. I work with a wonderful dancer called Alexandra Reynolds, who I work with on Theory of Everything and Danish Girl, who on the movement side of things. But that has to meld with the bodysuit and the costume that have been designed by Natalie, let alone the cinematography. And again, that was something that on Theory and Danish Girl, depending on what angle you were shot from and what the lighting was, things would either work or not. And so what was intriguing about this and thrilling as an actor was you're playing someone who has all of those processes, but you get to work with a brilliant team of people in concert with each other, and collectively we are only as good as each other's skills. So it really did feel like teamwork, and Gareth and Nigel allowed us the time for not only prep but also the screen tests, which were all those things which sometimes in television there's more compulsion, and time of course is complex. So I felt very lucky to have all of that.
What was the least comfortable disguise?
I've got to say, those deep prosthetics of Becker we were shooting at that part in Budapest in August, and it was so hot, and the bit they don't tell you if you haven't done much prosthetic work is the sweat, because your sweat has nowhere to go, and you've also got a big fat bodysuit on, and so we ended up having that Richard would have to prick with a pin elements of thing, and then this disgusting oozing sweat would come on. That was probably, I think, and doing some of the stunts in that apparel I don't think there was much fun on set those days, but you didn't have to witness that because you weren't there.
No. I was like, you did what? Oh, that sounds so, sorry about that.
What's that like to sweat into plastic? Oh.
But it was a good day, though. We love each other.
We never got to see each other. It was the most surreal experience working on something so intimately together and literally passing like ships in the night.
There were 2 moments, I think, a chase through the forest.
Spoiler.
There's so many chases in cinema and screen. We were in a forest, and Eddie had to pretend like he wasn't there and just ducked down, and I pretend like I couldn't see him, and just continued going. It was a cut, and then it was thank you. That was a great 2 minutes together on set. 3.
It was a great 2 minutes.
It really was lovely, actually, and that's how our friendship started.
Well, you're both also producing the series as well, and that must have been special to be able to, just have that input into your characters, into things that they do, and everything.
Yeah, it was for both of us. It was our first time producing. I think that
Ours too.
it was. There's a meticulousness, borderline obsessive quality to these characters, which I think Lashana and I share. But it was wonderful, honestly, because also in television you have different directors and over 4 different blocks. In some ways, we were the glue between those blocks, and getting to use those different skill sets was thrilling. In concert with these gentlemen, it was really we learnt a huge amount, I think.
Yeah, there's just so much that you gather by working with, the brilliant directors we've worked with across these years and the brilliant producers we've also worked with, that you develop a sense of what your style and what your desires for filmmaking and TV shows can be, and you realize that there's all these skills that are kind of hidden away behind your acting. Like I sang before I acted, so I have a real hunger for how do we tell stories with music, vibrationally, like musicality of text, and of how we cut to music, and how we draw you in with that opening title sequence that we're all so proud of, because a lot of hard work went into it, and now we have, I think, something really incredibly iconic that doesn't always happen in TV. I think that some audiences are really quick to skip past that first title sequence, and now I feel like it's a sequence of its own. It's like its own little film, and the discussions around that, like what is the musical identity of the show, what is the aesthetic, what is the grade going to look like, how do me and Eddie's thoughts align, the discussions behind VFX and what we, how we push the boundaries and how we maintain this standard and scope of the show that you saw tonight, in order for it to run across seasons, maybe, in a way that you would feel like you are a part of the show. And I do like to think that the kinds of decisions we've made on the producer side will help you feel like you are in on what the characters are doing, opposed to the characters just sitting with you in your living room and then you're out of it. I think there's a lot of connectivity between all of the departments that worked really, really hard day and night to ensure that the glue that Eddie touched on just now is thorough and is meaningful and is changing the landscape of just how we make screen in general. There's just too much to talk about to not ensure that those things are done in the right way and in a thorough way.
Well, Lashana just teed me up for my last question, which is, without spoiling anything, do you envision this as a many-season endeavor? And theoretically, how would you guys feel about revisiting these these characters?
Cool.
You know, the novel has an end and the movie has an end. So that's one way of looking at it. The other thing is we're in show business, and
There's
so
no business like show. Eddie literally just came from Broadway. I love that he just did that.
So who
I think that's a lovely enigmatic answer there. Did that answer your question?
There you go.
We'll see.
Okay, well, it is. I love this show. It's everything you said. It feels contemporary. It's propulsive. It's so much fun to watch. There's heart and there's comedy and the action and the cinematography is crazy and your performances are really truly extraordinary. You really, really are. The Day of the Jackal, November 14th, the first 5 episodes, and then they will air weekly, of course, on Peacock. I want to thank this panel, of course, Nigel Marchand, Gareth Neal, Lashana Lynch, Eddie Redmayne. Thank you so much for joining me, and thank you all so much.